Hi traders, welcome back to the channel. So another great question coming in, this one from a Desire to Trade member, formerly a YouTube subscriber. So it's good to see that we're making that transition and be able to help traders who really want to take their game to the next level. So I have a little fun with this one, and it's a real simple question. What is your daily workflow as a trader? So I can see the editing team already putting like workflows flying all over the place and documents and stuff. So, we try to keep it light. If anyone knows me, especially in the member community, I try to keep things lighthearted. And, you don't have to be very serious about this game. Even though it's a serious profession, we can have a little fun along the way during our successful journey. So the question is, what's your daily workflow as a trader? It's kind of a simple question. I had to really think about it. And I came up with one conclusion. Pretty much here's my workflow. Okay, so I'm keeping it light here, but it really is a valid question. And it really kind of lends insight into the day in the life of a full-time trader. And don't worry, no videos and B-roll about Lambos and walking on beaches. I really want to give you solid takeaways to at least my approach to how I approach each trading day. It's really important. I'm a full-time trader, and it's really important that I prepare myself for the day. So what we'll do is break this down into 3 buckets. That's really how I approach it. There's no long workflow, no 20-page documents. Quite honestly, I left the corporate sector because of that. I would do 60-page business requirement documents so they could sit on the desk and collect dust. Not here. I'm here to be productive, earn a living, and be successful and really secure my financial security. So I'm going to show you really how I do that. And it comes down to 3 buckets. All right, the first one, pre-market preparation. Really, in summary, this is how I get paid. This is where I earn my living. It's assessing the markets, where we are, what things are looking like, whether it's overnight session, Asia. All right, I'm in the US East Coast time, so I'm basically a standard New York Stock Exchange bread and butter 9:30 to 4 type person. But that pre-market, I'm doing a few things that are very, very critical to my success plan. The first thing, identify. Identify. I'm going through charts and going through stocks mostly, but also FX and my S&P futures. Now, the S&P futures is pretty much one chart, so I can get a glimpse of that in a pretty quick way. And then I'm going to look at some of the stocks that I have on my radar screen. It doesn't necessarily have to be going, tick, 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 but I will look at those, particularly NASDAQ 100s and the S&P 500. I want liquid stocks that I want to look at. Now, that aside, most of my bread and butter also comes from ES futures trading, which I've lightened up a lot this year. We had a previous video on that. I'm really looking for any opportunities that may arise, any setups that are meeting the criteria of my strategies. I really focus on 2 strategies to start the morning, but that can sort of breed out as market context develops. The first one, you could just click the link below. I'll give that to you. That's pretty easy. And in fact, I think they're closing that down this year and really making it for our members only. So you make sure, if you haven't got it, you want to click that on today. I am basically just going through the charts and looking to see if there are potential setups. Now, the last bucket, I'll tell you how I get it sort of tipped off on which ones that I may be putting on. But I'm going through the identification process. That's really, really important. And when I identify ones that may be hitting that day, and how I manage that is I'm going to start going through my alert process. I'm going to start putting alerts at the prices where I want to be interested, not the entry price. I want a little bit of a tip off, a little ahead of the game in case I'm busy or doing some other things or I'm out on the road. I want to have a little time to say, okay, digest it and say, is this a trigger? Is this not? Has things changed since my sort of pre-market preparation? So the key to my morning session, and I'm an early riser, is that sort of 6:30 to 9:30 time period is identification. It's all about identification. Now, the next part of my pre-market preparation is also pretty important, is what I'm going to do is create 2 or 3 scenarios. How, based on the information I'm seeing, based on overnights, based on yesterday's price action, where I want to focus my attention. And really that is focused on the S&P futures. Stocks pretty much are going to do their thing. If they hit my entry area, I'm going to place an order, put my stops and my targets, and it's kind of mechanical in a sense. Now, the S&P futures is its own little baby, and it needs a little more handholding. So what I'm going to do is create 2 to 3 different scenarios. I want to look at my data points. What areas or magnets am I looking for price to possibly test? That's going to be a possible scalp in the S&P futures or the SPYs or anything similar to that. but it requires these sort of scenarios. And a lot of them are really if then. So if I have an if then saying, well, if price goes below yesterday's low, do this, or maybe consider this. Well, if it opens up higher than yesterday's high, that scenario pretty much is crossed off. So I don't have to worry about that one. So what I'm doing is I'm narrowing it down to one or two to where I can execute it. And really, that decision is now made for me once it goes to the live session. So let's go to bucket number two, the actual live markets. Now, as I said, I'm in the New York time zone, so I'm going to have that sort of standard New York Stock Exchange 9:30 to 4. If there's pre-market news, such as news announcements, the S&P futures may come into play, and I look at that as sort of the start of the live session for the S&P. But during the market trading day, where most people think, hey, now I have to trade, those decisions are made for me. I have my scenarios that may play out, or they may not, and I have my pre-market alerts set that it did pre-market. So when they execute, great. So the only thing I'm really focusing on during the day, the live session, is really, did things get executed? And if they did, I have my stop, I have my target. It really is not much to do. In fact, I prefer to be away from the screens because I have a personal tendency to overtrade when I'm in front of the screen. So I may see alerts, I'll have notifications on my app, phone, and things like that. So I'm aware of what's going on. If nothing's happening and all of a sudden I see 5 or 6 entries, notifications all at once, wow, price must have really come down or the market's getting crushed to where maybe it's hitting my entry order. That's okay. It's all good. I'm just executing my plan. So during the live market hours, I'm really trying to focus on some other things, maybe doing some other work, doing some work for our desired trade members, things like that. And they may have questions during the live session, so I'll make myself available for that. All right, so the third bucket, you probably figured this out, after hours. What I want to do and really focus on, and a lot of times this happens right when the market closes if I'm available, is assess what happened during the day. What are my positions looking like? And I'm going to take sort of a global view. I'm going to sit on top of that mountain and say, what is my portfolio? Am I too long? Am I too short? Do I want to be too long? Do I want to be too short? Or maybe I just want to be sort of delta neutral. What are my stock positions? What are my options positions? Do I have opportunities to maybe sell premium on some of these? During the day, I'm not really looking at that too much. But what I want to do is take a step back while the prices aren't moving and say, okay, what can I do to prepare for the next day? The other things I'm going to do in the after hours, and this may be right after the market close, because I like to have that sort of buffer where 3 or 4 hours where I'm not even thinking about the markets, but it may happen right before I go to bed. I may watch a little Bloomberg. It's the only TV I really watch to just get a perspective of what's going on in Asia and just get a little bit of a little taste of fundamental analysis. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but if I see those, say, struggles with some type of chip or things like that, okay, and the NASDAQ futures are down big overnight, at least in the early part, I may want to start thinking, how is this going to affect my pre-market? So I'm sort of getting some initial scenarios, quirky nuances, and getting some data to prepare me for the next morning's pre-market preparation. I'll also look after market to see, is there any stops that need to be adjusted? If I'm really close to, say, a certain target, maybe I can move my stop up. And again, these are all based on the strategy and the rules that encompass it. I'm not really sitting there saying, I think I'll move my stop. It's all very calculated, very data-driven, and they're all part of my strategies. So this workflow is really, in my opinion, 3 little buckets. And the first one is really, really important. And I have very strict rules. If I can't complete my pre-market analysis, maybe I'm busy going out, maybe, life happens, family matters, I really can't trade that day, or at least I can't trade from a scalping perspective. I may have some swing trades that are already on, and I'll manage that portfolio, which, by the way, is also in the after hours markets too. I want to look at my open positions. Has the ship moved in a direction where I'm not comfortable, or maybe I need to add more longs, or balance my deltas, things like that. Those are all done sort of after hours. Now, one of the realities of trading, and one of the beautiful things about being a trader, is it provides a level of financial security, but also allows a lifestyle where I can be flexible. Maybe I'm traveling. Maybe I'm having a late lunch with someone. Right? I don't have to be like, I have to get home by 4 o'clock because I have to do my after hours prep. Right? It allows that flexibility, but there's a lot less flexibility in that pre-market preparation. That is how I get paid. So I want to wrap up by giving you a few solid takeaways to help you and at least give you some perspective. I can only give you the perspective of myself and the way I coach and sort of the general member community of successful traders and ones that are still developing some of the sort of key characteristics. But I will tell you, at Desire to Trade, myself, Etienne, Alejandro, the other coaches, we really are very simple people. We work on iPads. I'll have one big monitor. I have one over here for options, but really there's not these 20 screens and all these kind of things. We're not driving Lambos and partying on the beach. That we're not doing either. But at the same time, we keep it simple. We really try to stay away from all these indicators and things that really in the end don't have the math behind success. And we teach our members that as well. So we try to instill not just strategies and how to be successful, but we also try to communicate the culture of success, wealth management, and really how traders can be successful, not just in P&L, but also in taking advantage of the trader lifestyle, this beautiful lifestyle that this profession provides. It's funny, sometimes Etienne and I will meet in a foreign country, and depending on the time zone, it may be early, and we'll do our pre-market perspectives. And a lot of times we'll just do them separately, or we'll be talking while we're doing it. And I have to tell you, there's not this big elaborate setup with 20 screens. I mean, there's an iPad, and sometimes I'll be jotting things down. I'll have my app with me. And quite honestly, the pre-market scenarios that were mentioned earlier, a lot of them are just scribbles on a napkin. So the last two takeaways I want to make sure you understand, and particularly for this gracious member who sent in this question, don't let your full-time job or your profession hinder your trader growth. We've seen time and time again, in fact, those who watch the screen more, including myself, tend to underproduce. So use that buffer to your advantage, and you really get a more global, high-level view of the markets. Just place your trades, more of a set it and forget it type style. We found it to be much more successful. And the last point I want to make before I let you go is understand that if you have a full-time job and you're working a profession, but you have the dream of being a full-time trader and the success and lifestyle that comes with it, it's okay. In fact, I see too many traders, like I mentioned earlier, who stare at the screens all day and they're really not that successful. Working a full-time job allows you to take a step back and look at the ship. Where is my journey going? And sometimes, including myself, when we're day trading, we're just getting so granular into the minutia of tick charts, and it moved this, and oh boy, a 5-minute wick candle. I'm out of here. Take a step back and use your full-time profession as your advantage, and also maybe save a few pennies for that trader account. All right. I hope you enjoyed this one. Have a little fun with it. And I really appreciate your questions. This one from our own member. All right. Love it. Keep them coming, and we'll see you next time.